we covering practically from 1950 to current days some of the most instructive and beautiful games played by black in King's Indian. They are all black side victories, and we want to know what are typical combinations, typical positional play in King's Indian. And we are not going to have an accent on a current theory, because for that we had DVD on King's Indian defense. So we start with a game played between two Soviet at that time Grandmasters, Yuri Averbach and Alexander Kotov, in 1953 in candidates tournament, World Championship candidates tournament in Zurich, Switzerland. So d4, knight f6. I have to point here that theory of King's Indian was not as sophisticated over 50 years ago than today, but still games were very instructive. They're very strong players, and theme of the combinations and positional play is the same as today. So c4, d6, knight f3, knight b d7, knight c3, e5, e4, bishop e7. Now, why do we count this as a King's Indian? This opening, the way it started, it's not a King's Indian, it's Indian defense, kind of Benoni variety. But the reason I'm bringing this game here, because it turned into the King's Indian, and with all the King's Indian ideas and patterns. So that's why bear with me, and we're gonna see why I picked this game. Bishop e2, black castled, white castled, black played c6, queen c2, rook e8, rook d1, bishop f8, rook b1, a5, black played d5, knight c5, bishop e3, queen c7, h3, trying to prevent knight g4, and after h3 black played bishop d7, rook b1 to c1. White has some space advantage. g6, knight d2, rook a8 to b8. Now we arrived to the typical King's Indian position. It's King's Indian structure, pawn structure. Even g6 is played now. Bishop will go to g7. So it's, I could say this is 100% King's Indian now. It could have turned to different opening, but it is a King's Indian. Knight b3, knight takes b3, queen takes b3, and c5. Okay, this position is one of the most typical positions of the King's Indian. So white has a space advantage and possible play on the queen side, and black has to try to go f5, f4 and start king side attack. So after c5, white went king h2, black went king h8. King h8 is a good move because what black wants to do is to go f5. Knight has no other square than g8 to go to, and knight g8 is a good square because after f5 it's also possible bishop h6, exchanging white's superior bishop to black's relatively a worse bishop. So after king h8, queen c2, knight g8, and see, this is the kind of position, black's pawn structure, all black's pawns that are frozen pawns. Frozen pawns we call pawns that has a pawn, opponent's pawn in front of it. That means, well, c4, c5, d6, d5, and e5, e4. So since black has all pawns on dark square, they have relatively worse dark square bishop, and white has relatively worse light square bishop. So white played bishop g4, trying to exchange bishops, and black obviously cannot go f5, because after ef gf, bishop takes f5, white simply wins a pawn. So after bishop g4, knight h6 was played, bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, queen d2, knight has to go back to g8, and white played in this position g4. This is the move that not every strong player would make. White could have started queenside play, and when black goes f5, just meet with f3. It's pretty difficult for black to organize very strong attack without light square bishop. g4 is not necessarily a mistake, but gives black some play. f5, f3. Now you see it's still very difficult for black to make any significant progress on the king side. After f3, bishop e7, rook g1. Well, I think white should have played a3 and b4 as quick as possible. Rook g1 was played, and after rook g1, rook f8, rook c2 f1, rook f7, and g takes f. This is a mistake. I strongly believe this is a mistake. gf, gf, and let's talk why this is a mistake. Now you have to understand very well that sooner or later black has to go f4. Whether pawns are on the board, g-pawns, or g-pawns are off the board. And white has a wrong idea that after exchanging g-pawns, they may get an attack on a g-file. But that's typical King's Indian type of mistake. Because after f4 will be played, black is going to have great space advantage on the king side. Pawn f4 guarantees them space and all kinds of attacking possibilities. And in this position, I think white has significant problems. Rook g2 being consistent and trying to double rooks on g-file. Well, here f4 was played, and f4 had to be played. Bishop f2 and rook f6. Now white realizes that they have serious problems. Black is going to have an attack on white's king after rook h6, and they have to seriously think about protecting the h3 pawn. So black went knight e2 to try to play on rook h6, knight g1, and that will give them temporary safety. Even here, black has significant advantage. They can go bishop h4, exchanging dark square bishops, or go knight f6, knight h5, or maybe even go rook f8, rook f6, and try to double rooks there. So black has clear advantage here. But after knight e2, black has different solution. The solution is a brilliant combination, brilliant queen sacrifice. Queen takes h3. King takes h3 is absolutely forced, because after king g1, rook h6, white simply gets mated. So king takes h3. Now everything is forced. Everything from now, whatever happens from now on, is forced. Rook h6 check, king g4, knight f6 check, king f5, and knight d7. Well, knight d7 is preparing mating net with bringing the rook over. Rook g5 is one and the only defense in this position. Rook f8 check, king g4. And it's understandable that at this point both players run short on time, and there is no immediate and instant mate. So we're gonna see few times repetition of the moves, but that does not change. Eventually, black finds the winning continuation. Knight f6 check, king f5, knight g8 check, king g4, knight f6 check, king f5, knight takes d5 check. White has nothing to do but to repeat move, hoping for a draw. Knight f6 check, king f5, knight g8 check, king g4. You see, this is senseless repetition, but because there was a time control to make 40 moves in 2.5 hours, and they just made it. Now this is 41st move, and after knight f6 check, king f5, knight g8 check, king g4. Now black had enough time, because it's a new time control, and they finally found a winning continuation. Bishop takes g5, king takes g5. Notice black is still obligated to mate white's king, because there's still a lot of material down. Rook f7 check, bishop h4, and here rook f7 is not check, bishop h4, and here it's rook g6 check, king h5, rook f2 g7. Now white is hopelessly lost. Now you see that black would have done even better than this if they never played knight takes d5 check. I mean, if white's pawn would have been on d5, but it has only a very small difference. Now threatening rook h6 check, rook h6 mate, so bishop g5 is forced, rook takes g5 check, king h4, now knight f6. Now it's different mate, rook h5. Well, of course black did not see all of this when they sacrificed the queen. But let me tell you something. We are not computers, and sometime when you see the clearly how you checkmate opponent and you sacrifice queen, you should use your intuition. And intuitively, black was correctly predicting that they're gonna have totally winning position. After knight f6, knight g3 was played, stopping rook h5. Obviously f takes g is a mistake, because queen will take on g5, but simple rook takes g3 wins easily for black. Black intends to go back rook g5 and mate the same way. White is totally helpless. Queen takes d6, rook g3 to g6, and now we see rook h6. Mate is coming. White played queen b8 check, and after rook g8, white will be forced to take black's rook to avoid the rook h6 mate, and then there will be a piece down in the end game, and therefore in this position white resigned. Now this is instructive game, because what is the instructive? Let's make the conclusion about this game. White made a big mistake opening files on the king side. Although they had the g file for a couple of moves, they couldn't make any significant progress on g file, but black had big space advantage, and beautiful combination with a queen sacrifice led to very exciting finish. Very, very instructive and very powerful game for black.